The Mendon-Honeoye Falls-Lima Sentinel welcomes you to this edition of the Mayor's and Supervisors Weekly Update, brought to you by...
Each week, our community makes history. Each week, you make history. And each week, there's only one source to turn to for the first take on history. You know what that is? Subscribe to the Sentinel right now to discover the history being made in your own backyard.
The Mendon-Honeoye Falls-Lima Sentinel. More than just your news, it's your history.
Hey, welcome everyone to this week's edition of the Mayors and Supervisors Update. I am Chris Carosa, publisher of the Mendon-Honeoye Falls-Lima Sentinel, and each week we bring you the goings-on in the communities that we serve, towns and villages. That's what it is. This week we're going to start out with Steve Schultz. He's the supervisor of the town of Henrietta. Steve, take it away. What's going on in Henrietta?
So we just completed the auction for the surplus material in our old library. A number of years ago, we built a new library, and so we're about to demolish the old library in favor of town court, and we had an auction. The folks who did it, Digging for Deals, did a phenomenal job and sold everything in there, including stuff off the walls, but 3 items, and 2 of those were kind of beat up desks, so it didn't surprise us. It brought in over $25,000 to the town, and basically gets the library cleared out, so the demolition team won't have to do that. So it's been great. We're about to go out with the next round of bid packages for the general contractor and the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing portions of the building. So that's all moving along, and you know, a lot of new projects coming into town, especially in a number of restaurants. We're starting to see additional tenants come in for the Marketplace Mall, and the U of R Medical Center is expanding their facilities on Bailey Road. It's where they do their clinical lab testing. They said about 90% of all COVID tests were processed at that facility. And with the continuation of COVID testing as well as additional testing, they're expanding that facility. So a lot of progress going on, and happy to be a part of it.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Mike, over to you. Town of Lima, what's going on there?
Well, hello, Chris. Thanks for having us. I think the largest news is probably that we did have the public information session regarding the proposed water district in the town of Lima outside of the village. The district would cover all of the areas that currently do not have water and those that are currently served as out-of-district users by the village. We had a couple hours worth of presentation and then questions, etc., which the presentation you'll be able to see up on the Town of Lima website, along with some of the other supporting documentation. Now is the petition phase. We do not get to invent our own rules. We did not make up the petition ourselves, kind of thing. We follow all of the New York State guidelines when it comes to district formation. There's different choices that you can do, but we chose to involve all property owners, whether they live in the township or not. And so it is a petition process. The petitions, of course, are based on the assessed value of the property and the portion of that property that is actually contained inside the district. So if you have something that's assessed for $10,000, but only 1/10 of it is in the district, then the actual number on the petition is only $1,000. If you are exempted in Agricultural District 2 in Livingston County, which is a New York State exemption that is reserved for people who are actually farmers and producing and the like, then very little of that property has been included in the district to safeguard the farms. And those folks do not, as long as they are exempted and do not hook up, they don't have to actually pay into the debt service for the water district at all. If you have a deed on the property and it is the husband and wife whose names are on the deed, if the husband signs and the wife does not, only half of that assessed value counts on the petition. You don't get 2 votes kind of thing with husband and wife. They simply split the assessed value on the property. If it's a single owner, then they are voting with all of it. Those are the rules from New York State. I'm not sure what other questions that we've been getting that center around why is it assessed value, why is it this, why is it that, but that's really how the whole petition thing kind of hangs together based on the assessed values on the property. So if you have any questions, feel free to call me at the town hall, 582-1130. And even if I'm not there presently, I will get right back to you and we can answer your questions on the district. The district petition has to be passed by volunteers who actually live in the district. So there will be people who will be roaming around asking for signatures, etc. Remember, they are volunteers. They're not being paid. Please be kind, and we will see where it goes. Typically, 90 days worth of petition stuff, we should have a pretty good idea of whether the district will form or not, and then we'll move on from there. In other news, as it turns out, if you take the ashes from your fireplace and you toss them into your trash, and then you put your trash into your plastic toter, the ashes many times will actually ignite the trash and melt your plastic toter. Please do not put your ashes into the regular garbage stream. The plastic toters are not made to withstand fire. And while this seems silly to have to even talk about, it is happening all over the place with the weather that we've got, that people are dumping their hot ashes into the plastic toters and melting them down. Your trash hauler will probably charge you for a new one. It's not a defective toter. You simply can't throw hot ashes into them. And lastly, something we talked about a couple years ago and then maybe again last year was Assembly Bill 1560, which is regarding exemptions statewide for veterans. That has again resurfaced, but the new assembly number is 3458. So if you're following this along in the assembly, you would look up A 3458 and it will give you the newest iteration of that bill, where it is in committee, etc., and then the matching pieces that would go with it on the Senate side. So it's coming again into Albany. We'll see if it goes anywhere. And that's all I've got, Chris.
All right, thanks, Mike. Rick, over to you, Village of Honeoye Falls, and if you got anything on the county, we'd like to hear that too.
Thanks, Chris. It's always great to see everybody. I'm glad Mike is keeping a little bit warm today. It is something that we have to talk about all the time, though. It is that time of year. Of course, our weather changes day to day and sometimes hour by hour. But Friday, Saturday, this week we've had some real cold weather, and it's just that reminder that even if it's 2 weeks from now, when we have this type of weather, make sure you're checking on your elderly neighbors. Make sure you're make sure you get pets inside. Keep a lookout for those because they are not immune to the cold for sure. The village is over the next couple of months, we will be very well into our budget process. So that's going to take up a lot of our time. This coming weekend, I am going to Albany Sunday through Tuesday next week for the New York State Conference of Mayors legislative meeting. I'll be talking, I do have appointments set up with Senator Pam Helming and Assemblywoman Lunsford to speak specifically about village projects. This is the time that, I take those extra hours and meet with the Assembly and senators that support us for village projects, looking at funding for, sidewalk projects, street projects, sewer projects, et cetera, things that we may not have funding for in our budgets directly, to see where we can get some help. So we'll be doing that over the next few days. As far as county items, one of the things that's been a concern, the governor has put forth her budget suggestions for 23, and one of those things is that there is a potential transition of some Medicaid funding away from our counties, and it would be put into the state coffers. And right now, as I understand it, we're looking at about a $24.5 million take from Monroe County that will negatively impact all of our towns and villages if this goes through. This is just put out this week, so we're gathering more information, but it certainly is a concern for our counties across the state if this were to move forward. So we're going to be actively looking at that and certainly having some words about it. Today, or on Friday rather, I was able to attend the function at Nazareth College put on by GRAPE, and GRAPE stands for the Greater Rochester Area Partnership for the Elderly. Really important discussion about some of our most important residents throughout the county and throughout the state, our senior citizens. Right now, approximately 18% of our residents in Monroe County are age 65 or older. That is projected to move to 24% over the next 10 years. And, we have a lot of seniors who are on very limited budgets, don't have anyone advocating for them. And this discussion today had, various groups, Lifespan, and others that were there to talk about how we can help our seniors. So I think that's something that I'm going to certainly try to reach out to Supervisor Moffitt about, and some of those others around our areas, Supervisor Schultz, and even our partners in Livingston County or Ontario County, because we all have to understand what can we do to help our seniors. And I think sometimes at the local level, I know I as mayor don't have all the numbers in front of me of how many seniors we have directly in our municipality and what kind of help do they need. So, we have a great facility here in the village of Honeoye Falls. Episcopal Senior Living has a wonderful facility, and we know they can help us through some of this discussion. But I think it's really important that we try to figure out, what do our seniors have? What are they missing? How can we help them? So that's going to be something else that I know the county and I, in my legislative duties, are going to really be looking at over the next few months, just to make sure that locally we're doing all we can to help our seniors. And I think that's just really important. So those are just a few of the things going on. I appreciate the time as always, Chris, and thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Rick. John, town of Mendon, how are we doing there?
Chris, thanks as always. Nice to be here. I just wanted to touch base on a couple of things today. One is that we saw a tragic fire in the city of Rochester recently, where an individual lost their life in the fire. There was much discussion in the news outlets about certificates of occupancy, safety violations, that type of thing. And I will tell you, at the town of Mendon, we do take certificates of occupancy and safety violations very seriously, just for this reason. So I know sometimes people feel that code enforcement is intrusive in their lives, but they're there for a reason, and they're there for public safety. Recently, also in one of our neighboring communities, we saw, an attempt to drag a ATM away, I assume with its contents. And I just want to remind everybody in our community to be vigilant to any type of crime activity, and anything you see that just doesn't look right to you, call 911, because that type of crime and other types of crimes, unfortunately, do come our way once in a while. So please be aware. Regarding tax collection, everyone's least favorite subject, including mine, Michelle Booth, who is not only our town clerk, but also our receiver of taxes, will be open on Friday, February 10th until 4 p.m. to receive county and town taxes. Normally on Fridays, we close at 1 p.m. She will be staying open until 4 o'clock. I think I mentioned this last week, but also we have a drop box on the Main Street side. You can drop your tax payment in there. If you request a receipt, she'll send you one. And also you can mail your tax payment in as long as it's postmarked by February 10th. Summer recreation program that we contract with our neighboring communities and the Honeoye Falls-Lima Central School. Registration is underway. We subsidize, as well as our other communities, local communities, subsidize that program. It's a very nice program for the summer, and it's not too early to get into that program. And I know there is a late fee that goes into effect at some point in time, so be sure and check into that. I know it's only February, but time moves on rather quickly. Another item is that I'll be presenting to the board on February 13th a estimate of cost for a study to expand sidewalks in the hamlet of Mendon. That study will be done by the town engineer, and we'll be pursuing with that with the board approval. That'll come up on February 13th. If you'd like any information on that, please feel free to contact me. We certainly want to hear from our residents on the priorities of expanding sidewalks in the hamlet. Last but not least, some of my fellow mayors and supervisors have talked about the senior citizens. Our Honeoye Falls Mendon senior citizens have a few trips scheduled in the fairly near future. I would ask that any senior citizens in the village of Honeoye Falls, including the town of Mendon, contact the senior citizens. You can go through the website. You can contact Town Hall. We'll be glad to provide you the phone number for the individuals who are leading that. They have a lot of good trips coming up, so I encourage all our seniors to consider joining or attending those trips. Again, stay warm, and we'll look forward to some warmer weather in the future. Thanks.
All right. Anybody else got something that they may have forgotten?
Sure, I'll add. I've been following up with the Association of Towns from a topic that came up during my term as president of the Monroe County Supervisors Association, and it has to do with home rule with regards to zoning laws. So there was some proposed laws regarding auxiliary dwelling units and or secondary units. It's part of an attempt to increase housing, available housing stock to reduce prices. There's also some efforts that they're looking to try to remove some of the exclusionary zoning practices that, arose, especially during, I'll call it the Jim Crow era. They're all great goals, but unfortunately, the methods that we're seeing proposed in Albany tend to be fairly heavy-handed and take away home rule. And so I've been discussing with the Association of Towns, it's kind of been a little whack-a-mole when we try to stop the home rule. And I think the problem is because there hasn't come a solution that addresses the underlying problems that they're going after. And so I've been working with the Association of Towns, talking with them about approaches we can advocate. So for instance, going back to the auxiliary dwelling units, rather than say that they can be in any place, any property anywhere throughout the town, say, okay, towns, you have to identify 20% of your residential zoning districts that can allow these auxiliary dwelling units. And that allows the maintain home rule, you know, because being perfectly honest, a lot of our older communities, they don't have the infrastructure that could support the additional density that would come about from those auxiliary dwelling units. It impacts on the sewer, on the water, on the electricity. So, you know, it's just, it's important to maintain that whole home rule. And then, you know, one of the other things they've been talking about is affordable housing and talking about increasing the housing density. And the problem is that doesn't necessarily resolve the issue because, you know, home builders are in it for profit, and there's generally more profit to be made from building that bigger houses. And so if you're going to want to see them build more affordable homes, there needs to be some incentive for them to do so. Unfortunately, most towns do not have incentive zonings. I won't say most, but a lot of towns don't have incentive zoning laws, and they're non-trivial to implement. You know, so some possible ideas is, could there be a statewide incentive zoning law regarding affordable housing that towns could adopt? So the idea is you could keep your densities where they are for most houses, but if they meet some criteria, you could allow greater density. Because if you just change the zoning laws to reduce or to increase the density, reduce the lot size, I'll tell you what'll happen. The developers will build the bigger houses on smaller lots. There'll be no backyards, and they'll still make all their money, but they'll make additional profit instead of building affordable. So the other thing that they could do, I would never want to see a program where money goes directly to the developer, because that opens the door for corruption. But if, you know, one of the things, if you want to get the housing costs down for on a per lot cost, the development of the infrastructure, the installation of the infrastructure is often what creates high per lot costs, which then require them to go to larger homes to cover that cost. So one of the ideas could be, there could be, if the state wants to put something in place and address this, they could have a program where you could apply for funding to build that infrastructure. So the sewer, the water, and the roads. And so put that under the town, that it funds it so the town can see it put in. Now it could still be ultimately the developer who does the work, but the point is, it's now not just money going to the developer that could disappear. It would only go towards the installation of infrastructure. And if obviously if that infrastructure is paid for, it's not borne by the cost of the housing lots, which then can allow them to put in less expensive houses. But again, I would tie it to that requirement that they be more affordable homes. So that's the kind of stuff we're talking to try to put some, to kind of change the discussion, because like I said, otherwise I'm afraid we're going to end up with some heavy-handed legislation that comes out of Albany and tries to, you know, a lot of this, they're trying to solve problems for downstate, and then they paint upstate with the same brush, and problems that solve or solutions that work in one area often don't work in the other area. So we're trying to come up with ideas that will work all around. So that was a big topic. We had 18 of the 19 towns sign on to a letter to the governor with regards to that. So even though my term has ended, I've continued to follow up on that, you know, because it's important to all of us.
Thanks, Steve. And Steve, I'm going to follow up with you on that, because that's a topic that has come up as a potential discussion area in our regular quarterly Greater Western New York Town Hall meetings. That both that and the gas appliance issues, they're fighting head to head. Which one is the most urgent, so to speak? So I will definitely follow up with you on that. Everyone else all set? All right,
Chris.
Thanks so much. Oh, go ahead, Greg.
Chris, I was just going to say, Supervisor Moffett and I were talking last night about, and I won't dwell on this too long, but the ADU discussion is very important. And on local social media, there's been a lot of discussion on that as of late. We do plan to host, we're going to have a little bit of discussion about that at our next village board meeting, but then we probably will be hosting or supporting a community meeting here at the village hall or elsewhere regarding ADUs, because we want people to understand both sides, if you will, or all the information, not just, there's a lot of sentiment in this about, having an apartment for your aging parent or something like that. But there's a lot more to it that Steve brought up very well about the infrastructure, et cetera. So we are planning on talking about that in Honeoye Falls, and certainly our town partners will be invited to that as well.
Okay, just for the record, ADU means what?
Accessory dwelling unit.
Okay, good.
A lot of people think of them, Chris, you hear them tiny houses.
Okay,
Sometimes it's an apartment that's, you add an apartment right to a structure, so that's another type. But a lot of times it's an independent tiny home that's
all right.
situated in the backyard.
What I'm going to do for the purposes of the paper next week is I'm going to actually break out this ADU as a separate story rather than put it in with your regular stuff. So I've got what you said, Steve, and Rick, what you said. I'll put that in a separate story with a different headline that's focused in on that. I just think that's enough. It's an important enough issue with people that it should be broken up. This was a long one today, but it was very informative. Thanks everybody for watching. Remember, we're airing live, or not live. I always say live. We're broadcasting 1 o'clock on Sunday on our Facebook page. Like the page, and you'll be notified when it's broadcast. Same thing with our YouTube channel. If you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you'll be notified at 1 o'clock on Sunday when this is broadcast. Otherwise, you can read the transcript in the paper. That's it for now, folks. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Imagine yourself communicating with a difference. Pan-Dimensional Solutions helps you do this. Whether live spectator events, taped broadcasts, or real-time audience-engaging programs, you can benefit immediately from the tools Pan-Dimensional Solutions will share with you. Do you want to make a difference? Contact us at pandimensional.com.